there, lovelies. It's Sarah Leonard here from acatlikecuriosity.com, and welcome to my fourth edition of my Curious Artcast. If you haven't seen one of these videos before, basically it's a bit of a cross between a podcast and an art journal video. I found myself personally quite enjoying the idea of listening to podcasts, but I found it quite hard to keep focused and keep concentrating on the words that people were saying. I'd find my sort of mind drifting off a little bit. So I thought, if there are other people like me who kind of need something visual to focus on, that maybe an artcast might be a good way to keep my attention focused and keep me able to listen and to concentrate. So that's how this artcast idea was born. You can see more of these artcasts and lots of other videos on my website, which is acatlikecuriosity.com. And if you go to /artcasts, you'll be able to see the whole series, plus some morning pages and some curious chat sessions as well. So there's lots of resources there for you if you want to check those ones out. Today's artcast, this artcast that I'm recording now, is all about kind of ways to keep your sparkle in what can be a very sort of busy life, a busy online world, and ways to just keep yourself feeling your usual sparkly, important self, despite any other things that might be going on in your life. For myself, I often struggle with this idea. I often struggle with looking at other people's work, for example, looking at other people's successes, and perhaps feeling a bit unsuccessful and unimportant in comparison. So this is something that often comes up for me, that kind of imposter syndrome idea that, maybe I'm not really good enough, why am I really doing this, etc., etc. I'm sure we've all gone through those kind of feelings from time to time. And here are just a few thoughts from me on how to deal with those feelings and how to keep yourself that little bit more sparkly on a general day-to-day basis. So for me, things that I do to keep myself happy obviously include art and art journaling. If you have a look on the Artcast page, you'll see that I try to follow a practice called morning pages, which is taken from the Artist's Way book. But instead of doing writing, as is suggested, I just create art in my journal. I do find that journaling, although when I first started, I wasn't all that keen on the idea of journaling, I do find now that it's something I really, really enjoy. It's just very stress-free. There's no intended outcome. There's no product line that's going to come from the end of the work that I'm creating. There's no pressure to make it perfect because somebody might want to buy it. It's all just for me and just for exploring different techniques and trying different ideas, and from that point of view it's been absolutely invaluable. So I would say, if you haven't ever tried journaling before, if it's not sort of called to you so far, I would definitely recommend giving it a try, because I think it's something that could really help keep you creating new things, keep you trying new things, keep you doing new things. Other things that I like to do are just to allow myself to enjoy different things. So what I mean by that is not feeling like I have to do things a certain way or like a certain thing or a certain idea just because I'm nearly 40 and I should possibly grow up, or whatever other reason you can think of. So I like to try to indulge my inner child a little bit if I can at all, and I like to try to allow myself to like the things that I really, really like. So as an example of that, I recently bought myself some lovely handcrafted shoes from Love, Hetty and Dave, which have little dachshunds on the front, and they have little cats on the front, and they're super cute, but I suppose not really what a 40-year-old should sensibly be buying. But they just totally made my heart sing as soon as I saw them, so I knew I needed to have them. And similarly, I've allowed myself to experiment with different crystals and things, having watches that are made with crystals. I've allowed myself to buy these cute little hair grips that have little felt characters on. Again, things that you might think at the age of 40, or nearly 40 anyway, oh well, that's a little bit too young for me, I shouldn't really be doing that kind of thing. But I've just allowed myself to just follow what really seems to make me happy. And that is a surefire way to keep your sparkle going at all times, I think. Just sort of being aware of what makes you happy and allowing yourself to be that happy, and allowing yourself to access that, and allowing yourself to buy the silly childish thing that makes your heart sing with joy, or whatever it might be. So that's another way that I try and keep my sort of self, the usual sparkly self that I am. I also quite like to do, this is slightly embarrassing, but I do quite like to sing and dance around the house sometimes. I'm generally quite sort of introverted, which is why I don't do anything like that in public. But around the house sometimes, that's something I quite enjoy doing. Just put my headphones on and just sort of bop around the house and sing at the top of my voice, or whatever. Mime if I feel like it, if I don't feel like singing, if it's the wrong time of day for making that kind of noise. But I do really enjoy that, and it just sort of, keeps me happy, keeps me sparkly, keeps me myself. So it's definitely something that I enjoy doing privately without an audience, clearly. You won't ever be seeing any videos of that coming up on here on my YouTube channel, that's for certain. But those are just a few little things that I do and allow myself to do. I indulge myself in order that I can still carry on being my usual sparkly self. Because it's very easy to get lost in the lists of to-dos and should do this and should do that and everything else, and then suddenly you find that there's no time for just doing anything to just be you and be yourself and be happy. So those are a few little things. The main thing though, the key point really in all of these things I've said so far, is just the idea of following what makes you happy, following your joy. So for me, I know music makes me happy. I know creating art makes me happy. And I know having cute accessories makes me happy. So I'm sort of learning to indulge myself in those things a little bit in order to make me a happier, more sparkly version of myself, which otherwise I wouldn't be. I'm also learning a little bit about the value of just quiet time to myself. Sometimes the way to keep your sparkle going isn't to engage in a particular activity or do a certain thing or do something in a certain way. Sometimes it's just allowing yourself to be quiet and have that time to yourself and just be a little bit. I think with lives as busy as they are, and there's no doubt that everybody's lives are busy these days, it's very hard to switch off a lot of the time. You sort of find yourself rushing from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. It can be hard to give yourself that time and hard to allow yourself to switch off in that kind of way. So I've gotten a little bit better at that. I have my favourite cheesy sort of TV shows that I love to watch, things like the Gilmore Girls, things like The Good Life, which is an old 70s comedy show that I absolutely love. Just little things that just let me switch off. Other things I quite like to do, obviously, is just watching art tutorials and things. I have a whole series of those that I quite regularly watch online. I watch a lot on the Donna Downey website. I also quite like to watch ones on Shauna Petit's website. She does a Inspiration Sunday video tutorial, which I really like. I really enjoy watching. Just little escapes and little things like that just help you to get back to being you, get back to being that sparkly version of yourself. Those are the kind of things that I would recommend. But the main thing to do is to really sort of tune into that inner voice that everybody has, that tells you what you need, what you're looking for, what you want to have in your life. And just encourage that voice to come forward and be heard, and encourage yourself to listen to that voice and act accordingly. I know for many years before I started creating art, I had all these voices in my head saying, oh, well, you can't do that anyway, you're no good, that would be rubbish. So I didn't do it, and I ignored those voices all the time. But ultimately, that didn't work for me. If you have all these sort of things in your head saying, oh, I'd like to do that, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that, and you just ignore them and push them away, obviously that's not going to help you to be your most sparkly self. That's going to do the exact opposite, really. That's going to push you away from your most sparkly self. So learn to listen, I suppose, to yourself, to your voices, to the thoughts that you have. Listen to the things that make you happy and follow that bliss. That's my key point for today. Follow your bliss and you can't go too far wrong.